you. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our last evening of events associated with this group of talented multidisciplinary artists. I'm Abby Lewis, and you are here at Bethany Arts Community. We're in our auditorium, and we are tonight have a program for people here in person with us over Zoom, as well as streaming live. Tonight's program and our multidisciplinary residencies are made possible by grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and New York State Council on the Arts and Arts Westchester, and through generous support of donors in the area. I will say also that Bethany Arts was founded on the belief that by bringing people from all different perspectives and backgrounds together, artists and community members, artists in multiple different disciplines, that we have an opportunity to help create a better future world. Tonight's program is a musical performance and talk with artists in Residence Summer Kodama. It's a presentation of solo performance pieces composed during her residency and inspired by literary projections of Asian American Pacific Islander experience. Through research of various literary works of East Asian and Asian American authors, in addition to the exploration of the Asian diaspora and its influence in the framework of cultural assimilation, Legible is an attempt to create an exhibit that showcases the various contributions of Asian American Pacific Islanders writers through the engagement of audience in an interdisciplinary performance. With the recent rise in anti-Asian sentiment in the United States, Summer hopes to inspire the audience to inquire about their internationalization of systemic inequity, invisibility, and to further humanize the experiences of people of color. Summer is a Japanese-American upright electric bassist, composer, and educator. She passionately strives to understand, respect, and express as many different perspectives as possible of the human experience through her compositions and collaborative efforts. Her most recent awards include this residency, as well as the 2020 Downbeat Student Music Award for Outstanding Composition for Large Ensemble. She has also won numerous awards and fellowships through the Jazz Education Network in 2019, the Monterey Next Generation Jazz Festival in 2017, and McGill University 2018 to 2020. She's participated in residencies at Banff Center, Marrowstone Music Festival, the Disneyland All-American College Band, and BMI Jazz Composers Workshop. When not performing, Summer spends her time developing her voice as both a composer and a player. Her compositions showcase risk-taking improvisations. To play with her requires embracing the unexpected. In addition to her musical career, Summer is a co-founder of the Healing Hearts Cooperative, an organization dedicated to creating an inclusive community through virtual wellness events. Summer, we are very happy that you are here, and with that, I will turn it over to you. Thanks so much.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm going to play one for you, and then I'll talk. Hi, so I just had to like break the ice in the room for me, so I had to play up front, but I didn't want to continue without thanking Bethany Arts, the team here. Thank you for all the wonderful residents. It has seriously been a joy being around you all and getting to experience you all as humans and seeing like all these amazing projections of your work, and I've enjoyed it so much, so thank you sincerely. And thank you to David for running tech, and thank you for Abby and Bonnie for getting all the logistics together. Huge thank you to Bonnie actually, because she managed to get a double bass for me, which I wasn't expecting to get during the residency, so if she listens to this later, yeah, huge thank you to her. Great, so I really love to improvise, and it's probably one of the only times I ever feel present. And I don't know why I'm getting emotional talking about improvisation, but it's really something that it really gets me through. So I wanted to talk about some of my compositions that I wrote during this residency, and like Abby had mentioned before, I wrote it inspired by a couple of books by Asian American authors, but one I was focusing on particularly was this one by Ocean Vuong, who is, yes, this is one of the most deeply compelling narratives I've ever read, and so just to give a bit of a background, he is a Vietnamese American man, but he identifies himself as a man, and he's queer, and so he wrote this book, and he wrote it with the intention of it being a letter to his mom, but his mom can't read in English. So already it kind of has this vibe of longing to connect with somebody, and he is so vulnerable in this book, and I found some of the challenges that he went through to resonate with me, and so it was a heavy read, but so beautifully written, and it kind of reminded me of making like beautiful jewels out of blood or something. Like he managed to create this beautiful work from all these heavy feelings. So yeah, most of my compositions tonight are based from this book. I want to give a little bit of a background though. So I did earlier this year attempt to write my first piece using a novel, I guess, or no, using a poem, and it was The Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. So I have Maggie, who's my lovely tech assistant. If you could please flip to the next slide. So I just kind of wanted to give an idea of what the instrumentation was for this piece that I had written, and so it's for alto sax, tenor sax, a vocalist, a piano player, an acoustic bass, and a drum set. So this piece was something that I had written maybe 2 years prior, towards the end of 2019, and it didn't have any literary elements initially, and I kind of wrote it and kind of thought it was incomplete, so it kind of sat for the first part of the pandemic, but then I started reading a bit more, and I never considered myself to be an especially avid reader, but I started reading more after the pandemic, and I found Maya Angelou's poem to be compelling because it talks so much about freedom, and how, to me, she made it clear that so much of it lies within your perception of yourself, of where you are, and I really resonated with that. And so I wanted to write kind of a femme liberation piece. And so I guess some of the elements I wanted to point out were that because this was my first attempt gluing literature to composition, I was pretty literal with how I went about it. So I literally ripped text from her poem and glued it into the piece. So And so that was one way I tried to tell the story. But I also tried to tell it through elements of improvisation. So if you notice at the top of the line there are slash marks. In jazz speak, that means you're taking a solo, you're improvising. And so usually you'll see a set of chord changes, or you'll see like some type of harmonic indication. So you'll notice that there's not, but you'll see text that talks about the vibe. So I wrote whimsically, like you're about to tell an epic story, and I didn't really know what that meant when I wrote it down, but you'll see when I show the video of this how our sax player interpreted it. And so there are several other examples too, but I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'm just going to have you all listen to this piece and maybe talk a little bit about it later.
Maybe upstairs issue.
Yeah. We are packets downstairs and upstairs. Okay, no worries.
Well, I can say a little bit more about it when the video starts. So another thing you'll notice is I played around with form a lot, and that's kind of a common thing you'll see when composers write arrangements of music. So form can be, and I was doing a little bit of it when I was improvising for you all just now too. So I tried to stick with not more than 2 or 3 ideas that I would kind of circle back to. And sometimes these things you don't have too much time to think about. That's why I like improvisation. I have the tendency to overthink ideas, and so I just have to commit to whatever comes out. And so I think the first thing I played in the improvisation was, and then yeah, I just had to stick with it. So so I messed around with the form of this piece and made certain sections longer but with the same melody, made certain sections shorter but with the same melody. You can also change where the melody sits harmonically. So it could sound brighter or it could sound darker. The melodies can have the same general shape. So you can tell, it's like almost when you see 2 people who are related, you're like, you guys kind of look similar, but I kind of can't figure out what it is exactly. So yeah, music reminds me a lot of that as well. Are we ready to try again? Yeah.
On the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends and dips her wing in the orange sun rays and dares to cling the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through her bars of rage. Her wings are clipped and her feet are tied, so she opens her throat to sing. longed for still, and her tune is heard on the distant hill, for the cage bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on the dawn-bright lawn, and she names the sky her own. The cage bird sings with the fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and her tune is heard on the distant hill, for the cage bird sings of freedom.
I just want to point out that the saxophone players are married to each other, and I think it's so cute that they were like on one headphone and they're recording and they had their wedding rings on. So, so that was my first attempt in like writing a piece based off of a literary work, and so I wanted to do something different at this residency. Can you please put that slide? Thank you. So, but before that, I wanted to talk about what elements can be improvised, and some of that was used in the last piece that you heard. So when you improvise freely, that kind of sounds like pretty unknown territory to a lot of people, I think, even musicians. And I think it's because it seems so vague, because the parameters are literally endless. You can play whatever you like, but at the very same time, that's the beauty of it. The most important thing, I think, when you play free is implying a structure. It becomes more important, in fact, when you don't have parameters, because you need context. I mean, you don't need context. If your context is that you don't need context, then that's good enough, you know. But so, anyways, your form can be improvised. So with my improvisation earlier, I thought of 3 ideas and stuck to them and variated those. You can also improvise your language, which is, I think, the form of improvisation most people are familiar with. When you go to a bebop show and people are just ripping over changes, they're shedding that language, as they say. And so your interpretations of pieces can also be improvised too. And I'll demonstrate a little bit of that once I show some of my scores. So there are 3 things that I try to take away from the jazz vernacular pretty consistently, and that I felt I did when I wrote my 3 pieces from this residency. So using what you see on the page as a guideline more so than something you need to absolutely commit to. I think maybe the most important thing about like seeing a piece of music is honestly the style and the vibe, melody, style, and vibe. And I think that shows so much about how the piece of music is interpreted, and your interpretation is directly based from how you're feeling about whatever you're seeing. So that repetition, I think it just comes with being a bass player too. I think there's something very grounding and very rooting about hearing something repetitive, but not mundanely. It's important. Like, we all have to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. We all have to drink water every day. It's just the base. And Colin responds, and I find this really important when I'm playing by myself. One of the best pieces of advice I got about playing solo is you're playing duo with yourself. So improvisation, I feel, is a conduit for flow, and what I mean when I say that is I think it does a lot in propelling the storyline. And I think what's so great about it is you have the freedom to change your vibe in the moment. You can start sweetly and end destructively. You can begin destructively and end sweetly, I suppose. So, yes. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. So this piece I wrote is a game piece, and I don't know if you all have heard of that, but it's based off of this quote from the book, and I wrote it out loud here because I hand wrote the score, and it's hard to read my handwriting. So the quote is, "My mother once told me that the human eye is God's loneliest creation. How so much of the world passes through the pupil and still it holds nothing. The eye alone in its socket doesn't know there's another one just like it an inch away. Just as hungry, just as empty." So that's what I used. Next slide, please. I'll stand closer to the mic. I apologize for that. Okay, this is a piece that I intend to play with an ensemble, and I can demonstrate elements of it to you. I don't know if I could perform this piece right now, but I could do my best. So there are pods, which are like, they're indicated, they're like little hexagons, pod 1, pod 2, pod 3, and pod 4, and there are axes. So there are 8 of them, and 4 of them are left blank because it's a game piece. It's something that the 4 that are blank can be left up to you and your ensemble in the moment. So that's the premise of the piece. The pods are performed in sequential order. They represent ourselves as the observer. So it's just like that quote, like the eye is God's loneliest creation because we observe so much, but we don't retain. And that's kind of how we are as observers flowing through life. We pass through all these events and we observe so much, but at the very end of the day, we're going home with just our own bodies. So that's the idea I wanted to take. I wanted to be a little bit less literal, I think. So yeah, the pods vary, but they never cease. So if you notice, all of the pods, they're kind of the melodic material and the rhythmic material, it's all related. And the axes represent events in time. So if you see that like drawing I did at the bottom where it says pod X and it kind of looks like an atom with like an electron paths around it, that's kind of the visual that I'm striving for with this piece. So the pods are constant and the axes kind of flow in and out, they sneak in and they're present and then they disappear. So yeah, pieces like this are kind of challenging to play in an ensemble because I think you kind of have to have like an end goal in mind, a destination in mind. And when you're in the moment, sometimes you don't really want to think about that. So this is, I think, just as cerebral as maybe reading written out music, but maybe in a different way. So the axes, my first one is consonants, so anything that sounds harmonious. And then my second axis is dissonant, anything that sounds crunchy. And it doesn't need to be harmonically crunchy, but it could also just be like texturally crunchy too, like something like. Something like that. And then axis 3 are extended techniques, just because the bass has so much, it's such a large instrument, there are a lot of weird sounds that this instrument can make. So, I don't know, or Those are some examples of extended techniques. And then axis 4 are values smaller than an eighth note, so fast notes. Fast ideas like that. Yeah, I could demonstrate elements of this piece. So I think what I'm thinking, I'll just demonstrate the pods because I'm thinking it'll be some type of melodic bass line. Whenever you see like notes that are like a diamond or an X instead of like the whole note, that just indicates that it's a rhythm that you follow. So the notes can be improvised. So maybe if I'm playing a pod, I would play something like something repetitive. And then I could vary it. That's what I'm thinking for the pods. And then so around that are going to be, so ideally I'd like to have like a drummer and a pianist and, I don't know, guitarists, some horns, and they'll be doing things like, they could even play another melody if they're playing like, I don't know, axis 1 where it's consonant. So something like that. And I'm hoping that by the end, when we hit pod 4, there's more material there. I'm hoping that that's enough to build the energy. And I'm not sure how we'll end, but I'm sure there are many different ways and we'll find out. So that's my first piece that I wrote here. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. This one, so there was a part in the book where Ocean referred to this fact that he once read in the 1884 El Paso Daily Times, and I just thought that this was so heartbreaking. And I think the conclusion he comes to at the end is equally just as heartbreaking. So an article from the 1884 El Paso Daily Times reported that a white railroad worker was on trial for the murder of an unarmed Chinese man. The case was ultimately dismissed. The judge, Roy Bean, cited that Texas law, while prohibiting the murder of human beings, defined a human only as white, African American, or Mexican. The nameless yellow body was not considered human because it did not fit in a slot on a piece of paper. Sometimes you are erased before you are given the choice of stating who you are. So to be or not to be, that is the question. And I think that day, like that phrase was just like in my head, like that kind of happened a lot this week, where phrases from this book would just kind of be rhythmically playing in my head. So the first part of this that came together was the rhythm, and you can see that I wrote to be or not to be, that is the question underneath. Like if you look at the second line, I wrote it underneath the rhythm. So to be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. So I'm gonna just take a stab at performing this, and I haven't done it that much, so I could play what's on the page, but I could not too. Oh, wait, first of all. Okay. article from the 1884 El Paso Daily Times reported that a white railroad worker was on trial for the murder of an unarmed Chinese man. The case was ultimately dismissed. The judge, Roy Bean, cited that Texas law, while prohibiting the murder of human beings, defined a human only as white, African American, or Mexican. The nameless yellow body was not considered human because it did not fit on a slot on a piece of paper. Sometimes you are erased before you are given the choice of stating who you are. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. To be or not to be, that is the question. Yeah, thanks so much for making this a safe space to just kind of experiment with that. So that's my second piece. And then I have one more. And I think throughout the week I was trying really hard to like pick out certain things from Ocean's book that I could make into pieces. But then I just started thinking, you know, he wrote this entire book just so he can make the space for his feelings as a result of these challenges. And so I think so many of his feelings of otherness and longing kind of resonated with me on some level. And so I kind of wanted to just sit with the feeling and maybe challenge those thoughts of otherness or challenge those thoughts of not feeling like I really belong. And so that's why this piece is called I Am Love. And it's a mantra because I don't know, I kind of felt like I wanted to make this space for myself and then maybe kind of honor Ocean in that way too, because I feel like that's what he did when he wrote this beautiful book. And yeah, so this piece uses a lot of elements of repetition, and that's intentional because this is a mantra. So let's see how much time we have. Okay, we're still good. I'm going to close my segment of the evening by doing a little performance of this and seeing how it goes. And then this is the part that I'm hoping we could all sing, if you can catch the tune. Yeah. And this is the mantra right here. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, guys. That singing just like made my whole week. So thank you so much. Please stick around for the next set at 8 o'clock. It's going to be freaking great.